Have you ever wondered how much does it cost to build a shipping container home? There is so much information online. Some people telling you it's super cheap, other people telling you it's super expensive. So what is it? In this video, I'm gonna break down these 6 container homes that we're currently working on and help you understand how much it really costs to build a container home. So the first thing I wanna share with you is our container costs. So there's a variety of containers that you can select from. You can get used containers, you can get new containers, standard height or high cube. Now what we like to use is 1-trip high cube containers. This means the containers are in excellent condition, very little dents on them, and they're an extra foot taller. So we go with our 9'6" containers instead of 8'6". Now, it's a lot better quality of a container, but you do pay for it. So for this 20-foot container, we ended up paying $3,000 from the Port of Long Beach. We then needed to transport it here to Las Vegas, and our transport cost was about $1,000. So we're in at about $4,000 just for this 20-foot container. Now right here is a 40-foot container that we're working on for this same project. And these containers are obviously twice as big, so they're a little bit more expensive. Our cost on this 40-foot container was $4,300 from the port, and then it did cost about $1,000 to transport it here as well. So our cost on our container was $5,300. Now after you get your container, the first thing you're gonna usually do is your cutouts and reinforcements. This is gonna be for all of your doors and all of your windows. So that's gonna include your tube steel. Basically, you're gonna get a grinder, cut your holes for your windows and doors, purchase your steel. A welder is then gonna fabricate these frames and weld them in. On our 40-foot container models, we ended up spending $3,780 on structural. That includes the material and the labor. And on our 20-foot units, we spent $1,610. Now, these units do have a different amount of windows. On our 20-foot units, we have 3 main windows. And on our 40-foot units, I think we have about 8. So there's quite a few on these ones. Now for these clients, they did ask for upgraded entry doors at the end of their container. So we actually converted the original shipping container doors into entry doors. To do that, we actually used a grinder to cut out this entire panel. We then add this 1" by 1/4" flat stock metal on this end. We have some square tubing on the other end. So there's minimal material cost to do this, a little bit more on the labor side. So I'd say maybe call it $750 in labor and material to get it to this stage, but you also need glass. Let me show you the glass and break down what that costs as well. Now right here are the glass pieces that we're gonna be installing into those container doors. They're 1 1/8 inch thick. It's low E dual pane glass, and each one of these sheets costs us about $500 plus a couple $100 for installation. Now one of the unique upgrades we did on these containers is utilizing cedar siding for the exterior. Now it gives it a really cool look, softens that industrial feel. These boards retail for about $21 for a 12-foot board if you're purchasing them from a big box store like Lowe's. Now, because we purchased a lot of material in bulk, we were able to reduce that price to about $14 per board. So with that, to do a 20-foot container, just in material, we're at about $1,300. For a 40-foot container, closer to around $2,500. Now that is just for the cedar siding. We also have 2x3s installed as furring strips behind here as well. So there's some additional cost for those. Those are maybe $4 a pop. We have about 15 of them on each side. The main thing on this is really the labor. There's a lot of labor that goes into cutting all the boards, getting them prepped, installing them, sealing them. For one guy to do a 20-foot container could take him about 4 to 6 hours to do it really well. And you're looking at about closer to 8 to 10 hours for a 40-foot container. So you can see how it does take a good time investment, decent amount of material investment. And I would say if you're doing it as more of a DIY project, you should be able to complete a 20-foot unit for around $1,400 and a 40-foot unit for around $2,800. Now, when it comes to the windows and doors, I want to break that down for you. So right here behind us is a 6-foot by 3-foot picture window. Now these windows, you can get them in white vinyl. We got them in black vinyl. Okay, black vinyl is an upgrade. If we were to get it in white, it probably would have been around $300. To get it with black, we were looking at about $425. Now this unit has 1, 2, and a third window in the back. On these 20-footers, we are in at about $1,200 just in the raw window costs, not including products to seal it or install it. And then on our 40-foot containers, we're closer to around $2,000 for our windows. Now we do have entry doors on the 40-foot containers. Let's take a look at them and I'll share with you about those prices as well. So this right here will actually be functioning as the main entry door on the 40-foot units. It's a French entry door. It's an outswing door and it does have built-in blinds as well. Now we got these doors for around $1,300 a piece. that is without paint. So there is additional cost that's going to go into painting these. So if you're trying to get them painted, realistically, you're looking at around $1,800 for an entry door similar to this. That doesn't include your hardware. So our locking mechanism was about $200 plus our door handle of about $100. So all in, you're closer to about $2,000 just for this door setup. Now, after most of that exterior is completed, you shift to the interior. Now, this phase, the interior is partially already finished. But prior to installing shiplap and flooring and beams, there was a lot of rough-in that was required. One of those things is HVAC. Now, we typically recommend using a mini-split HVAC system. If you're doing a single system, you can get them for as low as around $750. If you're going to be doing a dual fan system like this unit, where we're going to have a fan right up here in the living room, another one in the bedroom, and one condenser mounted on the back, that system is about $1,800. Now, that doesn't include installation. There are systems that you can DIY. There's other ones where you may need to actually hire an HVAC tech to come and do the installation. Also, as part of the rough-in was all of the interior framing, the rough electrical, the rough plumbing, and the insulation. Now, framing wasn't a massive expense on these. We just went with traditional wood studs. Of course, we did do the framing on these differently, but our cost per stud was right around $3 to $4. When it comes to the electrical, we had someone come in and do all the rough electrical for us. Our material costs on electrical on these units was kind of expensive. Now, we have lights everywhere. This unit has 24 ceiling lights. There's outlets everywhere. There's a lot of circuits. So that means a lot more wire. So there is ways to keep the cost lower on these, but we're around $1,500 just in material costs for the electrical, not including the finished lights themselves. Now, when it comes to the labor for the electrical, we hired it out to an independent contractor. That price can really vary significantly depending on where you're at and who you're hiring it out to. We were at about $2,500 for all the electrical labor on this. On our 20-foot units, we were closer to about $1,500. Now, when it comes to rough plumbing, of course, we need to account for your materials and your labor. Your rough plumbing is going to include all of your PEX lines, installing your valves, your ABS drain lines, basically just getting it ready so that you can finish out your interior walls. So with that, you're typically looking at, for someone to do the rough and finish of a single fixture, call it a shower, a toilet, or a vanity, somewhere around $500 per fixture. Now, that is for the labor, and that can vary by location. So in the comments, if you're like, hey, that's low or that's high, I get it. It does vary. Now, when it comes to materials for plumbing, inside of our 20-foot containers, for the rough plumbing, we're around $750. Inside of our 40-foot containers, we're closer to around $1,200 just for the rough plumbing itself. Now, what I'm not accounting for here, which is an important expense to account for, is your water heater. Now, in these units, we're doing on-demand water heaters. You could use different options. The ones that we're getting have to provide enough hot water for the lower 40-foot container and the upper 20-foot container. They consume a lot of power and they're a little more expensive. I believe those ones we got for somewhere around $850 to $900. If you just go with a more traditional tanked water heater, you can get them for as low as around $400. Now, for this next one, I want you to hold your jaw because this one is kind of expensive. And that is the insulation. For those of you that know, the type of insulation you use in a container home is really important. Containers can sweat, and you don't want condensation developing behind your walls. So because of that, we recommend using closed cell spray foam. Now, this is going to a location in Oklahoma where it can actually get really cold. Just this last winter, they got to -10 degrees. So they have a unit out there right now, and they basically said, hey, we want to beef up the insulation a little bit more. What we ended up doing on this unit is R21 in the sidewalls, which is about 3 inches, R28 in the ceiling, which is 4 inches of closed cell spray foam, and R14 in the floors, which is 2 inches of closed cell spray foam. And our total cost to do all 6 of the units was $30,000. Now, what that kind of ends up breaking out to is about $6,000 for the 40-foot containers and about $3,000 for the 20-foot containers. Now, one of the unique things with these units is they actually gonna have rooftop decks on them as well. Some of the models are gonna have 20-foot rooftop decks, others have 40-foot rooftop decks. Let me show you the rooftop deck and share with you that pricing as well. Now, right here is an example of one of our 20-foot rooftop decks. These railings are all collapsible. We went right here with a stainless steel cable spaced out about every 3.5 inches. And we actually are gonna have an overhang of about 3 feet on the front as well. Now, our cost on these rooftop deck frames, just the frame, was about $4,500. And on our 40-foot models, they're about $9,000 for that 40-foot frame. Now that doesn't account for your Trex decking as well. Now for the decking, like I mentioned, we use Trex. That's gonna run horizontally, so we're gonna get 8-foot pieces that run all the way down. On a 20-foot unit like this, we're around $700 in Trex. On a 40-foot unit, we're looking at closer to $1,400. So our raw cost on the labor and materials to do something like this, if you're doing it, is more of a DIY type project. You're looking at, on a 20-foot unit, to be close to around $6,500, and on a 40-foot unit, close to around $12,000. Now, when it comes to the paint on these containers, our 20-foot containers take about 5 gallons of paint. Our 40-foot containers take about 10 gallons of paint. Now, those buckets of paint, each 5-gallon pail, you're looking around $150. Now, there's different paint you can buy at different levels and different qualities. For us, we're looking at about $30 per gallon. Now, there's also the time to install it and potentially to pay someone to come and do it. So if you're gonna contract this out completely, you're not gonna go buy the materials, you're not gonna do the paint yourself. On a 40-foot container, you can usually get it painted for around $900. On a 20-foot container, around $600. All right, so I'm gonna break down some of the interior finishes. We're not there at this stage yet, but I wanna give you an idea on what those costs are anticipated to be. So we'll kick off just with flooring. We did do the flooring already. The flooring per box of flooring is about $50. It covers about 20 square feet. And in a unit like this, we'll typically buy 9 boxes. So about $450 for a 20-foot unit. For the 40-foot units, you're looking at closer to about $900. Now that doesn't include the underlayment. The underlayment would easily add about $100 on a 20-foot unit and about $200 on a 40-foot unit. For labor on that, it's something that you could really do yourself. Flooring isn't one of the more technical aspects of the build. And so you could do a 20-foot container floor. If it's your first time, maybe it'll take you 4 hours. If you're experienced, you can do it in less time. Likewise, on a 40-foot container, if it's your first time, it's gonna take you a full day. Otherwise, maybe you do it in 5 hours, 6 hours. And so it just depends if you're paying someone out that at 50 bucks an hour, that could be an extra 300 bucks. And so flooring on a 20-foot container, if you're gonna have someone else do it, maybe on the safe side, budget around $900. And on a 40-foot container, you can budget closer to around $1,300 or maybe $1,400. And that would be a safe number to use. If you come under that, that's great. Now these next couple are a little bit painful, okay guys? So one of them is gonna be the barn doors, and I definitely underestimated what it would cost to make these. They sent me photos of the barn doors, and you know, they were high quality wood, mirrors on the back of them, and I just thought, man, that doesn't look like it'd be too expensive to make. I thought we were gonna be able to make them for about $400 a pop. Reality is they ended up costing us about $1,100 a pop. Now there were a total of 10 of these barn doors. So you can see it's $11,000 in barn doors for these 6 containers. But what I would tell you is there's a lot more cost-effective options. Instead of going with an all-custom barn door made with really expensive, high-quality wood, you may want to consider just getting a prefab, mass-manufactured barn door. If you go that route, you can get them for just a few $100s. You can find them on Amazon, Wayfair. They don't need to look like wood. They could just be a slab barn door that maybe you paint a cool color. Or what I like is the barn doors with frosted glass panels that you can usually pick up for around $300. Now the barn door hardware is really affordable. You can get it on Amazon, and under $100 you're gonna get your sliding hardware, your doors, your guide on the bottom. So on that end, it isn't expensive. Another big expense for us was the interior cabinetry and furnishings. Now the most expensive piece of furniture that we had on the inside of these units is sofa Murphy beds. Now regardless of where you're gonna buy one, if you're getting a sofa that is also a Murphy bed and they're all in one, it's gonna be expensive. You can go to a company like Breda Beds and get them for say $3,500. What we did though is in this space, we were very limited on the type of bed we could use. There was nothing available on the open market that would work the way we needed it to work. And for that reason, we had to go 100% custom. Custom cushions, custom bed. That cost us about $4,000 just in raw material and labor, not any of the planning or managing it or anything like that to get the beds made. Now we had a total of 4 sofa Murphy beds, came out to about $16,000. Like I said, you could use a company like Breda Beds and have it purchased and installed for closer to around $3,300 if you really do want a sofa Murphy bed. Now, when it comes to cabinets, there's a couple paths you have. You can go to Lowe's, buy over-the-counter cabinets for $100, $200, $300. These units had custom cabinetry. Everything's soft close. The face of the cabinets is a higher grade quality material. Some of them are custom colors like blues, blacks, different things like that. And so our cost per cabinet was closer to around $450. Now, if I sum up all of our kitchen cabinets, our Murphy bed, we have a couple wardrobes in the units as well, we are close to about $27,000 in cabinetry and furnishings. Now, when it comes to the kitchens, you also want to account for your countertops. Now, in these units, we had two different kind of countertops we were using. One was butcher block and one was quartz. Our butcher block countertops are pretty cost effective. We can get a large slab of butcher block for around $250. In each one of these kitchens, use about 1.5 pieces of the butcher block. In some of these kitchens, we did have quartz countertops. So what we did is we shopped around in Vegas. We got a big slab. It was like 10 feet long by 5 feet tall. We got it for about $1,000, which was a very reasonable price. And then we turned that into 2 kitchens. So $1,000 in material, and then we had to pay someone to actually fabricate each of those kitchens. The cost to actually fabricate the quartz into 1 kitchen was about $800. Now, we did something similar with the vanities. In the past, we've done a lot of butcher block. You could choose to use quartz or a different material. So we purchased a slab of quartz for, once again, about $1,000. And then for about $100 a pop, we had someone cut those into vanity tops. Now, there's a lot of materials that I haven't mentioned, and this video could go on for another 45 minutes if I told you every single item that we purchased, from every single LED light to outlet cover to sink to faucet, etc. And so to expedite this a little bit, I am going to give you a total summary, but I want to discuss overall labor costs as well. So on one of these 20-foot containers, what I would call a little bit more of like a raw labor cost was about $18,000. Now, if you're paying someone else to do that, there is certainly going to be a markup. It's going to be a lot more than that, okay? If you're hiring a specialty contractor to come in, but if you're doing it in a very lean way, you're kind of functioning as your project manager, you're bringing people in for maybe $30 an hour and you're managing them, I think you can keep these costs on the lower end of a 20-foot container. Could be even closer to $12,000. On the 40-foot containers, our labor cost was basically double that. We're at about $38,000. And like I said, that will vary, right? If you're managing it yourself, people are doing it for 30 bucks an hour, and you have as much stuff going into these units as we do, you're gonna be in your 30s. Now, if you are outsourcing that completely to a contractor that's gonna come in and do the work, literally it's probably gonna be double that. You're probably gonna be paying somewhere around 60 plus whatever the material costs are to actually build it out as well. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, how much does it cost? Like, what is the total amount of material and labor? Now, I wanna preface this by saying, these are really high-end units, okay? I showed you guys the exterior siding, the rooftop decks, the container doors converted to glass, the sofa Murphy beds, the quartz countertops, there's tile showers. I mean, these are high-end units, and so they're a lot more per square foot in cost to us than maybe a very simple unit that we can kind of just bang out, do drywall, and nothing on the exterior in terms of wood, no crazy sofa Murphy beds. So keep that in mind. But I would say on these 40-foot units, we're in at about $55,000 per unit just in raw materials, okay? No labor. That's just us calling up all of our suppliers, all of our vendors, placing our order for the materials of the 40-foot containers. On the 20-foot containers, our material cost is about $35,000. Now, like I gave you that preface earlier, you can build out a 20-foot container and have material costs that are closer to $18,000. You can build out 40-foot containers, have material costs that are closer to $30,000. It all depends on how sophisticated you're getting, how custom you're getting. That's probably the single biggest driver, is how custom you're getting versus how prefab and standardized and efficient of a build you're choosing to do. This particular unit that I'm in, a 20-foot container, the labor cost was around $22,500. Now on the 40-foot containers, we were essentially double. We were about $45,000 in labor. Now, if you're a builder, you could be looking at this and be like, Tony, how did you spend that much on labor? I want to preface with saying, this was all custom. There was a lot of labor that went into these units. On a more traditional build, on a simpler build out, that labor cost for a 20-foot container could be closer to $15,000. And on a 40-foot container, could be closer to $30,000. But with all of the upgrades and with all of the customizations, that's what it came out to. Now, I want to zoom out a little bit and help you understand as you're trying to navigate budgeting for your own project. What these costs have not included is any site preparation, any permitting, any inspections, anything like that. You are going to need to account for possibly getting utilities to your property, your water, your power, your sewage, as well as the grading of your land, your foundation for your container home, the cost to potentially deliver your containers and crane them into place, and your exterior hardscape and landscape costs. So if you're trying to do something that's a 20-foot container, let's just consider more of an average build out. For labor, you're self-doing it, you're self-managing it. Let's just round it up and call it $20,000. For materials, you're purchasing all of the materials. You're going with a nice interior finish, but you're not getting crazy and over the top. You're probably looking at another $15,000, which puts you at about 35 grand. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's actually super cheap. $35,000. If you did it as a DIY project, maybe you'd be in it $25,000, maybe potentially a little bit less. Now, if you're here in Vegas, if I were to look for a home in Vegas that was $25,000, nothing would pop up on Zillow. I've looked for cheap stuff. At $200,000, it's basically a rundown mobile home that needs to be torn out. So container housing can be done affordably. For those of you that are interested in doing it as more of a DIY type project, and if you're in the right location where the regulations aren't insane and they're more reasonable to do it as an owner builder, you could really do something like this and add an additional container to your property. Or maybe you have a remote property. It's out in the desert, up in the mountains. You want to create your own cabin. This could be a very effective way to do it. You could even build out a container at your house and then transport it to your remote vacation property, have it set up and ready to go for a very affordable price. If you enjoyed this video and you're a DIYer and you want to build your own container home, but you want more helpful information like this, I've put together a free 60-minute training exactly for you. It's going to share with you some of our biggest secrets learned after building over 125 container homes. Things that we've implemented that save us a lot of time on our projects, a lot of costs on materials, and that can help you tremendously. The link is in the description below for you to be able to check that out. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.